What's cooking? Good looking. No, concentrate. Anyway. Okay. Do you want to talk about fuel price? I think let's try it. Hi guys, it has been a while, aka 3 weeks, since you've seen this beautiful face. My name is Koyegazi Mtini and welcome to my YouTube channel. Here on my YouTube channel we talk about a wide array of things that interest me and possibly are interesting to you. So welcome to Koyegazi Mtini's YouTube channel, the home for conversations. If you are here for the first time, guys, please do like and subscribe and share. Today I have something new, something that I haven't done before, but something that I definitely told you guys that I will be doing, and it is the FinChat part of the conversation. So FinChat is when I speak about like a financial topic, whether it be personal finance, whether it be something just in the financial realm that really interests me. Just like everybody else, I don't know what's happening in the market all the time, but I do think that given the technical background that I have, I kind of do have some idea, and I also like to research and find out. So here I'm just trying to break it down into the simplest form where it's consumable, keep the videos very short. So how does petrol price affect you if you don't have a car, if you do have a car? So firstly, if you do have a car, petrol price obviously affects you when you go and fill up at the petrol station. If you're not, let's say, a vehicle owner or a driver necessarily that buys petrol, how does petrol affect you? It simply affects you because most of our goods are transported on road, right? So when the petrol price actually goes up, it means that transportation costs go up. And it also then means that the price of goods goes up, and so whatever you could buy last year becomes more expensive. That's you. It's not obviously like immediate. When the petrol price goes up, then everybody's going to change the price of bread or change, but it does impact, and you do see the impact as a consumer. So the point that I wanted to make is that petrol price affects absolutely everybody. In order for us to actually chat through how COVID affected the petrol price, I think that firstly we must understand how we actually get to the petrol price. So there are 4 things that actually go into the petrol price, right? It is your general fuel levy, it is your road accident fund levy, it is your basic fuel price, and it's also the margins of the retailers and wholesalers. The first 2 that I named are taxations on our fuel. So if you didn't know, we actually get taxed quite a lot. We really do get taxed quite a lot on a liter of petrol. In April of every year, once a year, we get an increase in our taxations on fuel, and then in December of the year we'll see our margins for retailers and wholesalers increasing, right? So this year we had a 25 cents increase in our fuel levy. I think it was 16 cents increase in the general fuel levy, and then we also had a 9 cents increase in the road accident fund levy. So that came into action in April, bringing up the amount that we get taxed on a liter of petrol. In South Africa, 60% of our demand for fuel is satisfied, right, through importing Brent crude oil. If the price of Brent crude oil goes up, right, it means that chances are whatever price that you're getting at the petrol pump is actually going to go up as well. So petrol is going to become more expensive. So on the 23rd of January, China went into lockdown. So China is actually one of the biggest consumers of oil. So what happens when China goes into hard lockdown, it means that there is less demand, and in economics, like the price we say is determined by various factors, but the main thing we talk about in economics is demand and supply. When demand goes up, meaning that, and this is for like your normal goods. So let's say oil is a normal good. We don't need to talk about the other ones. right? So let's say demand actually goes up, more people want it, so therefore it means people are willing to pay more for a good, and in this instance it's oil. Look at the oil producers in the world. A lot of their GDP is impacted by how much oil they can sell, and also that price of the price of oil. They need to be in control really of the money that they make on the products that they sell. So that would be oil, right? So what we have now is OPEC and OPEC Plus, where they come together and they sort of decide on how much fuel must be in the market in order for them to maintain certain levels of oil prices, right? So back to what I was talking about with regards to China. So China went into lockdown, which meant that one of the biggest consumers of oil was no longer consuming that much oil. So what does that do? It means that the price of oil and the money that the oil producers would be making would become less, because the price itself is becoming less, and over and above that they're selling less of the actual product, right? So the suppliers come together, OPEC meeting, let's decide on how we're going to cut back on the oil that we're putting into the market so that we can see an uplift in the prices, right? Because it's in the best interest of all of us. Right. Here we have this meeting, OPEC Plus, here's Saudi, here's Russia, here's whatever. And so Russia was like, Nabi and Izzy, count me out. I am not cutting my supply. I'm still going to produce the same amount of barrels, and everybody was just like, we never expected that, because the demand has come down, so obviously let's cut so we can all make a fair price. Different countries have different sort of money power, money is different, but Russia is one of the big dogs. Saudi Arabia is also one of the big dogs at that table. So Russia's like, Andizi, bah. Saudi Arabia is like, you talking to me? Are you talking to me, Russia? Are you talking to us, right? So what Saudi Arabia does, Saudi Arabia is just like, you know what? This is geopolitical things coming into play, right? So Saudi Arabia is just like, you know what? It's fine. You guys think that you guys are smart and you guys will survive. So what will we do? We will pump. So opening zonke tab, all of them. Let's get more oil into the market. And then what we saw the price of oil, because those talks didn't actually work out. We saw the price of oil plummet, right? Because what we'll have now in the market, we have a decrease in demand. We have an oversupply already, but now Saudi is just like, open up the taps, open up the tanks. You're getting oil, everybody's getting oil. And now we have like oversupply, oversupply. So we have too much oil in the market. People don't need it that much. So, okay. Yabo, that's the problem. And so that oil price war went on. It went on, I think, for 31 days. Those oil prices went down and under, right? Which obviously affected also the financial market. And we were seeing record lows after the 2008 financial crisis. Like, guys, it be mess on mess on mess. On top of the fact that already there was a lot of strain in the financial markets because of COVID. But Russia and Saudi, it was the Russia-Saudi oil price war. And they were just like, we're going to fight and zizoshuba in the world, globally, because oil is that important. It feels like by Zindaba, but anyway, Zindaba is educational, so it's fine. Let's just park that bit now when we're talking about geopolitical, and let's start talking about the South African exchange rate. So let's say even if the prices remain the same per barrel of oil in the market, right? What would happen is that if the rand depreciates, which means that against the dollar, which means that it becomes more expensive for us to buy $1. It means that when we actually buy with our South African rands, we can buy less per that rand or per those rands or whatever. We can afford less dollars. So that means essentially oil is becoming more expensive. So now we understand the exchange rate component and how that impacts, right? So what happened with the South African, the rand against the dollar, and I think a lot of currencies against the dollar, is that when we started to see a lot of uncertainty just because of COVID, what happens is, so in the market you can see risk on sentiment, you can see risk off sentiment. So risk on means that investors are willing to take more risks. So the riskiest asset to actually invest in would be our equities or our stocks, right? When there's uncertainty, people are willing to risk less. Well, in the sense that you want to make as much money off the least amount of risk. So what you do is, to decrease risk, you'd like move out of stocks. Your more safer assets would be like your treasuries, bonds, etc., and there you would get less return. So people are like, I'd rather get much less return, or even just maintain the value of my amount. So some people took out their money and held their cash, right? Then actually lose it in the market, right? So people, that's called, then we saw a risk off sentiment where people pulled their money out of the market, right? And put it into what? Into US treasuries. And why US treasuries? Because they're more of like the safer haven. US treasuries are like a safer haven, and I think we can touch on that at another point as to why US treasuries are the safer haven. So people moved their money into US treasuries, which in order for more people to be able to buy US treasuries, it means that more people want what? The US dollar, because you buy it in dollars, right? So you buy that dollar, buy that dollar, buy that dollar, buy that dollar. And what do we see? A strengthening of the dollar, because people are demanding it even more. So when you look at this, here's the dollar getting better, more people want it. What that means is that you can buy less dollars with the South African rand. The dollar is appreciating and the rand is depreciating against the dollar. Right? So the relationship we would have expected to see is that when the rand depreciates, that petrol will become more expensive. But have a look at the April petrol price. What you saw was it plunged. It really went down. It really went down. It wasn't the lowest that we've seen this year, but it really went down. This is weird, right? Because we should have seen the petrol price going up because of the 25-cent increase on taxation. We should have seen the petrol price go up because, number two, the rand was weakening against the dollar, right? But we saw the petrol price coming down. Why? The main reason was what I described earlier. It was the oil price war, where we saw record lows. So the net effect of that was that the price of the basic fuel price came right down. We would have thought, okay, now oh damn, that's enough, like it's the lowest we're gonna see, thank you, whatever. But what we saw after March is, or at the end of March, we saw us going into lockdown. We saw a lot of global economies going into lockdown, hard lockdown. So it's not just China, it's not just China, it's the world globally with the spread of COVID, right? So what does that do with the demand? It further hinders the demand, right? So here you have an effect of, we've got so much oil pumping into the system, We've got demand diminishing, right? And so after 31 days, as I'd mentioned, I think I'd mentioned it earlier, the oil price war came to an end. And Russia had then agreed to cut the supply of oil, right? And sure, now get sharp, that's good, thank you so much, oil price war, you've caused your damage, but at least it's done, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to see like an uplift or something great happening in the oil price. It doesn't work like that, because you've already pumped the oil. The oil is there, right? So like, if I think fuel will get more expensive in a month's time, I will get into a contract for someone to sell it to me at a certain price now so that I don't have to pay the higher price then. Those are called like your futures contracts. It's an agreement or a contract for you to provide this good at a certain date for me, and that's like hedging. It's called hedging against the risk of price fluctuations, etc, etc, etc. So what happens is that in the oil market, a lot of people hedge because there's so much volatility within the oil market. At a certain date when you trade these, they close out in the market, right? So closing out means that that's the point at which we exchange the goods. So it's the delivery. So here we have very low, very, very low demand, right? And here we have a lot of supply, a lot of futures are going to close out. Your May futures are going to close out the deliveries for May fuel. But the thing is, right, oil needs to be stored because like oil is a real thing. Like it's not fake. It's a real thing. It's a real commodity. But where we thought we'd store this oil still has oil. Why? Because people haven't demanded or used that oil or bought that oil. So here we are chilling without an ability to store oil, right? So this is where we saw it was the WTI, which is usually used in America. That oil price, we saw it going into negative territory. What the hell? What does a negative oil price actually mean? So what that negative oil price means, it means that like in the market, somebody would pay you to take the oil. Like somebody would say, please take it, I'll pay you for taking it. Oil, I will pay you for taking this oil, please, because I don't know where to store it. And that's where we had that's where we actually had the negative in the WTI. Brent crude oil didn't go into negative territory. However, that also plunged. So price in May was 12 Rand and 2 cents, right? Which is ridiculous. Coming from a 15 Rand 53 before lockdown to 12 Rand and 2 cents in lockdown. I mean, really. Very few people actually realize the benefit of that actual decline in oil price or in petrol price because the consumer is cooped at home. Like that's what we're doing, that's where we are. So in June we saw an increase, in July we saw an increase, however COVID is still there. Demand is still suppressed and whatever, and like at least the oil price war is done. In long and short, those are the factors that affected our oil price, geopolitical, supply, demand, price in the market, right? And that's where we're seeing a lot of the volatility, right? I think it's also very interesting to note that the petrol price can go down, it can go up, but it definitely affects everybody. I think it's very important for you to also know like just what's happening around you and how that's going to impact you and affect you. And I really hope that you enjoyed this and it didn't seem too boring, too technical, and that there is something that you definitely can take away from this.